Well, we've been telling you about a shocking crime in Muskegon, a young girl taken from the bus stop and sexually assaulted. Tonight, a lot of parents may be considering some tough conversations with their children. So what is the best way to talk about such a grown-up subject? Tom Cottreal is the Vice President of Counseling Services at the YWCA. Tom, thank you for joining us tonight once again.
Thank you for asking.
Let's start out with, what are some of the things that kids are thinking about, if they do get word of something like this? How does a kid process what they're hearing in the first place?
Well, depending on the age of the child, most children believe that things happen to them are typically their fault. So whenever there's a discussion with the child about a potential danger out there, there needs to be the real clear message that you're not responsible for the things that happen to you. And kids also have a pretty wild imagination. So adults also need to be careful about the kind of information they actually give to children. And in that process, whenever we kind of introduce a fear, whether it's something that happened to somebody else or something you're concerned about with regard to your child, it should always be balanced by the parent with, and this is how the parent is going to be the hero. This is how the parent is going to ensure the safety of that child. So the child's not just left with a fear with no way of managing it.
So that can be a really tough thing to do. You said depending on the age. Talk a little bit more about that. When can kids, what's the cutoff point, I guess, until kids can start really taking some of this stuff into consideration for themselves in a more stable way?
Well, it's going to vary from child to child, and depending on the circumstances and depending on the danger, I mean, we can have 5-year-olds not run out into the street, but at the same time, it may be difficult for a 14-year-old to decide who's responsible if she's sexually assaulted. So it really depends on the age, it really depends on the circumstances.
What can parents do, as far as having this tough conversation? How do you start bringing it up, and do you need to bring it up if kids hear, for say, in the news or something like that?
I think from a preventative standpoint, it should be brought up from the day the children begin to interact with the community. As just talk about safety, and safety can reach into many arenas in a child's life, but certainly safety against abduction, safety against sexual assault are all things that should be talked about very, very early on in a preventative way. When it becomes reactive to a circumstance, some of the damage is already done because the child is overwhelmed or the parent is overwhelmed or it's during a state of panic. But if there can be preemptive discussions on an ongoing basis, then when something occurs, it kind of fits into a context. It isn't coming out of the blue and startles a child. Right,
so casually bringing it up, talking about it as you go.
I think having even purposeful conversations about, now you're going to start taking the bus. Here's the rules about safety when you take the bus. Or here's, you're going over to spend the night at a friend's house. Here's the rules about safety when you go someplace. And just keep introducing concepts of safety throughout a child's life.
Okay, Tom Cottreal from the YWCA, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. And we want to give you one more